Welcome again to FRIPSY. This is the second part of a three-part tutorial. In part 1, we discuss FRIPSY inputs and outputs and how to process runs in single stand mode. Here in part 2, you will learn how to enter data and make runs in batch mode. The batch processing module enables you to load and process data from multiple stands and treatment scenarios. You access it by clicking on the Batch Setup tab. You will then see a screen like this. The input variables represented by each column heading are the same as those we described in part 1 for single stand processing. We have already entered some data just for demonstration purposes. You can enter data under the column heading shown here, either directly or by pasting external data already compiled to this format. Each row of data represents one stand or treatment scenario with a unique identifier, which is the stand ID shown in the left column. In batch mode, errors and warnings are defined and handled a little differently than in single stand mode. You check your data by clicking the Validate button. Valid input values for site and treatment variables are constrained to be within modeled ranges, and any data entered outside the specified allowable values will result in an error. This feature was introduced because irrational forecasts are less likely to be noticed in batch than in single stand mode, and also to avoid crashing the model during batch operations. The status of each row will then be displayed in the column to the left of the button. Warnings are identified with a light blue cell color. By hovering your cursor over a cell with a warning, you will see an embedded comment that explains the nature of the data issue. If a row contains warnings but no errors, its status will be OK. But if a row contains any errors, it is invalid and cannot be run. Errors are identified by a light red cell color. Data entries like this one, which is outside the variable's allowable range, will result in an error. Information on each input variable, its format, allowable range of values, and the default value assumed if missing, is embedded in each header row. You trigger this by clicking on the column heading. Here's another common error. If the number of trees you stipulate to be left after thinning exceeds the number estimated to be available, an error is generated, and the run for this stand will be cancelled. Once the input data are entered and validated, click the Batch button in order to process the data. You will be presented with the Batch module interface shown here. The interface includes information about the number of valid and invalid runs, an opportunity to correct inputs by clicking the Edit Runs button, a Select Output folder button enabling you to select a folder for the batch output, and checkboxes for selecting output options. The PDF option provides you with a printable stand regeneration report for each stand. If you select the Gypsy output option, detailed Gypsy observations, projections, and reports will also be output. You get a message reminding you that this will increase the required processing time. Once you have selected your options, click the Process button, the runs will be made, and you will get a message when they are successfully completed. You can view the batch output by clicking the Batch Output tab shown here. It will also be available to you in the output file that you specified during setup. The output is displayed in groups of columns, starting with input data as shown here. By scrolling to the right, you will also see regeneration forecasts for conditions before and after thinning, at performance assessment, and at handover 18 years after cut, and yields forecast to MAI culmination age. And finally, The batch output report will give you a complete itemization of error and warning messages associated with each stand. Thank you, and thanks to these organizations for their technical and financial assistance in developing FRIPSY.